There is a level of calm that most people never reach, not because it is impossible, but because it is uncomfortable to build. It is the kind of calm that does not break under pressure, that does not react to every word, that does not collapse when things go wrong. Most people are controlled by their emotions. They react instantly. They feel everything deeply. They are pulled in different directions by what happens around them. And because of that, their peace is unstable. Their focus is inconsistent. Their life feels unpredictable. But the Stoics understood something powerful. Peace is not found. It is built through discipline, through awareness, through control. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced war, betrayal, pressure, and responsibility beyond what most people will ever experience. Yet he remained steady, not because his life was easy, but because his mind was trained. He did not allow emotions to control him. He guided them. And that is what makes someone emotionally untouchable. Not the absence of emotion, but mastery over it. If you want more Stoic wisdom that strengthens your mindset daily, subscribe to the channel. Because emotional strength is something you build. 1. You control your reaction. There is a moment that defines your emotional strength. It happens quickly, almost unnoticed, between what happens and how you respond. Most people miss this moment. They react instantly, without thinking, without awareness. They allow emotion to take control, and once emotion takes control, everything becomes reactive. Words are said without intention, decisions are made without clarity, regret follows. But the Stoics built their strength in this moment. The teacher Epictetus taught that it is not events that disturb us, but our judgment about them. This means that what you feel is not automatic. It is influenced by your interpretation, by your mindset, by your awareness. A strong person recognizes this. They create space, a pause, a moment to observe before reacting, and in that moment something powerful happens. They choose how to respond, they choose what to feel, they choose what matters. This is not suppression, it is control, because emotions are natural, but reactions are guided. Each time you pause before reacting, you strengthen your discipline. Each time you choose your response, you build awareness, and over time, that awareness becomes automatic. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once triggered you becomes neutral, because now you are not reacting blindly, you are responding intentionally. Each morning when you remind yourself to control your reaction, something shifts. You become calmer, more focused, more in control, because now you are not driven by emotion, you are guided by choice, because control begins in that small moment. 2. You do not take things personally. There is a hidden source of emotional pain that most people never question. They take things personally. Words, actions, situations. They interpret everything as a reflection of themselves. If someone is rude, they feel attacked. If someone ignores them, they feel rejected. If something goes wrong, they feel responsible. And over time, this creates emotional exhaustion, because they are constantly carrying things that were never theirs. But the Stoics understood something freeing. Not everything is about you. The philosopher Seneca believed that we suffer more from interpretation than reality. What people say, what people do, often reflects their own state, their stress, their perspective, their mindset, not yours. A strong person understands this. They observe behavior without absorbing it. They listen without internalizing. They remain aware without becoming affected. This creates distance, and in that distance there is control, because now You are no longer reacting emotionally to everything. You are choosing what deserves your energy and what does not. Each time you stop taking things personally, you release unnecessary weight. You protect your peace. You maintain clarity. Because now, your emotional state is not dependent on others. It is guided by you. Each morning, when you remind yourself that not everything is personal, something changes. You become lighter, more focused, more stable, because you are no longer carrying what does not belong to you, because peace comes from perspective. 3. You stay calm under pressure. Pressure reveals truth, not the version of yourself you want to be, but the version you have built. Most people want to be calm, focused, in control. But when pressure comes, they react. They panic, they lose clarity, because they have not trained for that moment. The Stoics trained for pressure daily. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that he would face difficult people, unexpected problems, uncomfortable situations. Not to feel discouraged, but to be prepared. Because preparation creates calm. A strong person does not expect life to be easy. They expect challenges. And because of that, they are not surprised when difficulty appears. They remain steady, they breathe, they observe, they respond. Because they understand that pressure is temporary, but their response is lasting. Each time you remain calm under pressure, you strengthen your mind. You prove to yourself that you can handle difficulty, that you can stay focused, that you can remain in control. And over time, that becomes your default. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once caused panic becomes routine. Because now you are trained. Each morning when you remind yourself to stay calm under pressure, something shifts. You become prepared, aware, focused, because you know that difficulty will come. But you are ready for it. If this message is helping you stay calm in difficult situations, subscribe to the channel, because strength is built under pressure. 4. You let go of what you cannot control. There is a silent habit that drains most people every day. They try to control everything. Outcomes, people, situations. They replay conversations in their minds. They imagine different scenarios. They worry about things that have not happened, and in doing so they lose energy, focus, clarity, because they are investing in something they cannot change. The Stoics saw this clearly. The teacher Epictetus taught that some things are within our control, and some things are not. Your thoughts, your actions, your choices, these belong to you, but everything else does not. And once you truly understand this, something shifts. You stop chasing control where it does not exist. You stop trying to force outcomes. You stop attaching your peace to external things. A strong person redirects their focus. They bring it inward, to what they can influence, to what they can improve, to what they can act on, because that is where power exists. Each time you let go of what you cannot control, you release pressure. You reduce stress. You create space. And in that space there is clarity, because now your mind is not crowded with unnecessary worry. It is focused, calm, intentional. This does not mean you become passive. It means you become effective, because your energy is no longer scattered. It is directed. Each morning, when you remind yourself to let go, something changes. You feel lighter, more focused, more in control. Because you are no longer fighting reality, you are working with it. Because peace begins when you let go. 5. You do not chase emotional highs. Most people live their lives chasing feelings, happiness, excitement, pleasure. They want to feel good all the time, and when they don't, they feel like something is wrong. So they look for distractions, entertainment, validation, anything that gives them a temporary emotional high. But those highs never last. They fade, and when they fade, they leave emptiness. The Stoics understood this deeply. They did not chase emotional highs, they built emotional stability. The philosopher Seneca believed that a calm and steady mind is more powerful than one driven by constant pleasure. Because stability creates control, a strong person does not depend on feeling good to function. They do not rely on motivation. They do not chase temporary emotions. They build consistency. They remain balanced, focused, grounded, because they understand that emotions rise and fall. They change, they fluctuate, but discipline remains. Each time you detach from emotional highs, you gain something greater: stability, clarity, control, because now your actions are not dependent on how you feel. They are guided by what matters. This is what makes you emotionally untouchable, not the absence of emotion, but independence from it. Each morning, when you remind yourself not to chase feelings, something shifts. You stop reacting to every emotional change. You remain steady, focused, in control, because now your direction is not determined by how you feel, it is determined by your discipline. Because true strength is stability. 6. You build inner discipline. There is a difference between feeling strong and being strong. Most people feel strong when everything is going well, when motivation is high, when life is easy. But real strength is different. It shows itself when things are difficult, when you are tired, when you do not feel like continuing, when everything in you wants to stop. That is where discipline begins. Because discipline is not about how you feel, it is about what you do, regardless of how you feel. The Stoics understood this clearly. The philosopher Seneca emphasized daily practice, not occasional effort, not bursts of motivation, but consistent action. Because discipline creates structure, and structure creates control. Most people wait for the right moment, the right mood, the right level of motivation. But those moments are unreliable. They come and go, and when they go, so does progress. A strong person does not wait, they act. They commit to their actions regardless of how they feel. They show up daily, even when it is difficult, even when it feels slow, even when results are not visible, because they understand something powerful. Discipline compounds. Each action strengthens a habit. Each habit shapes identity, and identity determines your life. This is how emotional strength is built, not through one big decision, but through many small ones, repeated consistently. Each time you act without relying on motivation, you strengthen your discipline. Each time you continue despite resistance, you build resilience. And over time, that becomes who you are. A mentally strong person does not depend on external conditions. They depend on internal discipline. Each morning, when you remind yourself to act regardless of how you feel, something shifts. You stop negotiating with yourself, you stop delaying action, you start moving, and that movement creates progress. Because discipline is what creates freedom. 7. You observe your thoughts. Your thoughts are constant. They never stop. They move from one idea to another, from one interpretation to another, and most of the time you follow them without question. You believe them, you react to them, you allow them to shape your emotions. But the Stoics practiced something different. They observed. They created distance between themselves and their thoughts. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius treated his thoughts as something to examine, not something to obey blindly. Because not every thought is true, not every thought is useful, not every thought deserves your attention. A strong person understands this. They watch their thoughts, they notice patterns, they identify what is helpful and what is harmful. This creates awareness, and awareness creates control, because now you are not reacting automatically, you are choosing intentionally. Each time a negative thought appears, you have a choice: to follow it, or to question it, to believe it, or to challenge it. And in that choice you gain power, because now your emotions are not driven by uncontrolled thinking. They are guided by awareness. This is what makes someone emotionally untouchable, not the absence of thoughts, but control over them. Each morning when you remind yourself to observe your thoughts, something changes. You become more aware, more intentional, more focused. Because now your mind is not controlling you, you are guiding it, and that changes everything. If this message is helping you become more aware of your thinking, subscribe to the channel. Because clarity begins with observation. 8. You accept reality without resistance. There is a subtle habit that creates unnecessary suffering. It is not what happens. It is the resistance to what happens. Most people fight reality. They wish things were different. They replay situations. They resist outcomes they cannot change. And in doing so, they create tension, frustration, emotional exhaustion. Because reality does not change based on resistance. But the Stoics understood something freeing. Acceptance is not weakness, it is clarity. The teacher Epictetus taught that suffering comes not from events, but from our judgment of them. When you resist reality, you are fighting something that already exists. And that fight drains you. A strong person does something different. They accept what is, not passively, but clearly. They see reality without distortion, without denial, without emotional exaggeration. And once they accept it, they act, they adapt, they move forward. Because acceptance removes confusion, it removes resistance, it creates focus. Now your energy is not wasted on wishing things were different, it is directed toward what can be done. This is where strength is built. Not in avoiding reality, but in facing it fully. Each time you accept reality, you gain control, not over what happens, but over how you respond. And that response shapes everything. Each morning when you remind yourself to accept what is, something shifts. You feel calmer, more grounded, more in control, because you are no longer fighting what cannot be changed. You are working with it, because clarity begins with acceptance. 9. You become emotionally independent. There is a level of strength that very few people reach, not because it is impossible, but because it requires deep internal work. It is emotional independence, the ability to remain stable regardless of external conditions. Not dependent on praise, not affected by criticism, not controlled by circumstances. Most people live the opposite way. Their emotions rise and fall based on what happens around them. If things go well, they feel good. If things go wrong, they feel bad. Their internal state is constantly changing because it is tied to external events. But the Stoics built something different. They built stability from within. The philosopher Seneca believed that true strength comes from self-reliance, not isolation, but independence. A strong person does not rely on others to feel complete. They do not depend on validation. They do not seek constant approval, because their value is internal. Their stability is internal. Their control is internal. This does not mean they do not feel. It means they are not controlled by what they feel. They experience emotions, but they do not become them. They remain grounded, centered, stable. This is what makes someone emotionally untouchable. Not the absence of emotion, but independence from external influence. Each time you rely less on external validation, you gain strength. Each time you remain stable despite circumstances, you build resilience. And over time, that resilience becomes your identity. Each morning, when you remind yourself that your peace comes from within, something shifts. You stop seeking, you start building. You become stronger, more focused, more in control. Because now your emotional state is not determined by the world, it is guided by you. Because true strength comes from within. Becoming emotionally untouchable is not about avoiding life. It is not about suppressing feelings. It is not about becoming cold or distant. It is about mastery. The mastery of your reactions, your thoughts, your responses. The Stoics did not remove emotion, they refined it, they guided it, they controlled it. Because they understood that emotion without discipline leads to chaos, but emotion guided by awareness creates strength. Most people live reactively, they respond without thinking. They follow their emotions, they are pulled in different directions by what happens around them. And because of that, their peace is unstable, their focus is inconsistent, their life feels unpredictable. But those who train their mind become different. They pause, they observe, they choose. And that choice creates control, real control. The kind of control that does not break under pressure. The kind of control that remains steady in uncertainty. The kind of control that makes you emotionally untouchable. But this level of strength is not built in one moment. It is built daily, through habits, through discipline, through awareness. Each habit you build shapes your mind. Each decision you make strengthens your control. Each moment you choose awareness over reaction brings you closer. This is the path, not easy, but powerful, because on the other side of this path is clarity. Peace, strength, control. If you made it this far, it means something in you is ready, ready to improve, ready to grow, ready to take control of your emotions. But what matters now is action, not tomorrow, not later. Now, take one habit from this video. Apply it today, because that is where change begins. Small, quiet, but powerful, and when repeated, it becomes transformation. If this video helped you think differently, if it gave you clarity, if it pushed you to take control of your emotions, subscribe to the channel, because this is where you build discipline, this is where you strengthen your mindset, this is where you become emotionally unshakable. And when you control your emotions, you control your life. Everything you want begins there.